Today, we bring you an inspirational story, The Jar of Life. A professor set a glass jar on a table. He silently placed some rocks in the jar until no more could fit. Then he asked his students if the jar was full, and they agreed that it was. He said, "Really?" Then he pulled out a pile of small pebbles. He added them to the jar and shook it slightly until the pebbles filled the spaces between the rocks. Then he asked again, "Is the jar full?" The students agreed. He then took out a box of sand and poured the sand into the jar, filling the space between the pebbles. He then asked the same question again. This time, the class hesitated. Some felt the jar was full, but others were wary of another trick. The professor then grabbed a pitcher of water and filled the jar to the brim. He said, "If this jar is your life, what does this experiment show you?" One of the students answered, "No matter how busy you think you are, you can always take on more." "That is one view," replied the professor. "The rocks represent the big things in your life, your family, your health, your hopes and dreams. Those things that if everything else was lost and only they remained, your life would still have meaning. The pebbles represent the things in your life that matter, but that you could live without. These are the other things in your life that give it meaning. Your job, your house, your hobbies, your friendships. The sand and water represent the small stuff that fills our time. Watching TV, running errands, and the like." Looking at the class, he asked, "Can you see what would happen inside the jar if we started with sand and water? The water and sand would fill the jar and make no room for anything else. The sand and the water don't need planning. We do them anyway, but don't make them the most important things in your life. Make room for what's important. So, identify your rocks and take care of those first. The things that really matter and are critical to your long-term well-being and happiness. Set aside the time you need to work on them. If you deal with the big issues first, the small issues can still fall into place. However, the reverse is not true. Take some time to reflect. Do you ensure there is room for the rocks and then fill it up with sand and water? Or is your jar full of sand and water, leaving little to no room for rocks? Of course, this is not to say that you should stay away from sand and water activities. They are important too. But what matters is how you prioritize the rocks in your life. If you do not decide on your priorities, you will never find time for what matters to you. Priorities can differ from person to person, and that's absolutely fine. To each his own. In the end, it is all about balance. We need everything in the right proportions to lead a fulfilling life.